Welcome to the channel. I'm your host Eche, and what we're talking about today are some of the greatest albums ever heard, or in some people's cases, the greatest albums never heard. Now, to launch this particular segment, I have something very, very special to talk about. It's an album released by one of London's preeminent lyricists. This lyricist is so cold, he found himself in Def Jam Icon in 2006, along with other US heavyweights such as Big Boi, Redman, Method Man, T.I., Ludacris, etc. And he most definitely stands amongst those when it comes to rapping. Now, we're talking about Kano, of course, hailing from East London, and the album in question is his 2016 release, Made in the Manor. So without any further ado, let's jump into it. So to add just a bit of context, 6 years span between his previous album, Method to the Madness, and this particular release. So of course, from an artistic perspective, that's a risk, having a gap of 6 years between the albums. Now, did he deliver? Most definitely. And one of the things that I feel that makes this album so special is the fact that it's so autobiographical. The level of vulnerability that Kano employs on this particular album, and their seminal records all over the place. I have always loved the angle, the way in which Kano talks about the manor, the ends, the estates, the hood, however you want to frame it. He has a very unique and vivid approach to actually depicting the struggles, the bitter, the sweet, and everything in between when it comes to the ends, to the manor. And he captured that perfectly with this particular album. Okay, and these are powerful records that we're going to be talking about. And the first one that I want to talk about is called T-Shirt Weather, right, in the Manor. And this particular track, powerful track, what I love about this track is the comparison, the contrast, the juxtaposition. Of course, when it's summer, right, people are out there having a good time, they're bubbling around, drinking, vibing, socializing. Okay, he has the lyric, barbecue all day, you're in the garden, Breezer and Alizé get the party started. That's how he begins the first verse. And by the time we get to the next verse, he talks about how it could all change in a minute. I've seen innocent summers turn sinister, tempers flare up, the violence is imminent. So we're talking about heat, we're talking about the temperature. That same heat that can be fantastic in one aspect can actually very quickly turn into something combustible. Okay, and that's the manor, that's the estate, and he captures that so poetically in T-Shirt Weather. Another track is Free Wheel Ups, and this is a track that features Kano alongside Wiley and Giggs, and of course they're flexing their lyrical muscles in this particular regard. And there's a couple of bars from Kano that really jumps out to me. So in this particular track, what does he say? He says, in bits where kids don't give a shit about olders, where man don't care about fathers, man just care about figures. Right? So that's powerful. We're talking about situations where the fathers at, where the father figures at, who do people turn to? What's it all about at the end of the day for some people? It's all about the figures, it's all about the money. Of course, this is something that can perpetuate certain cycles. And so that's just one of the lines amongst many. There's plenty in there, plenty of different flows and situations, but those particular lines stood out for me. At the top of the video, I mentioned one of the things that I really, really enjoy about this album is the level of vulnerability, the autobiographical nature of this particular project. And this next track that I'm going to be talking about captures that essence perfectly. We're talking about the track called Little Sis. And in this track, Kano's talking about a sister who he doesn't really know, and the fact that so many moments in her life have passed by, and the way he matches the nature of the beat, a subdued beat, it's just a track in which you need to just take in the full extent of the story as Kano pours his heart out. And maybe there's relationships in your life in which things have unfolded in a similar manner, where so much time has elapsed and you've just not really maintained contact with that particular individual. Okay, and it's a beautiful track, heart-wrenching track, right? Full of brutal honesty. Another track, we're talking about Deep Blues. Now, something I haven't mentioned, of course, the production. Kano has a fantastic ear for beats and production and different sounds, right? Different sounds. Now, the essence, the instrumental for this particular track, Deep Blues, he's contemplating heavy topics, right? Melancholic topics. Even though he's at the pinnacle, even though he's at the peak, there's still invisible struggles unseen to the naked eye. And one of the lines that stands out, he says, "So without a bruise, you won't see the pain I'm going through. Sometimes I feel like every day is Monday blues." Okay, so there's hidden pain. Yes, he's made it. Yes, he has the records, but he's going through his own mental struggles, and he captures these struggles across the verses. And the landscape, the soundscape that's created by the haunting vocals by Damon Albarn, it's like a chant. Visceral is the impact of this particular track. Like the instrumental is hard to actually explain and verbalize. You just need to put your headphones in and listen to this very powerful track, Deep Blues. This next track, this is a track that maybe one day I'll make an entire video about this track. This is my personal favorite track on the whole album. Seminal track. We're talking about someone depicting the hood, the ends, with such lyrical dexterity, with such clarity, with such poise, with such a mature and 360-degree perspective. There's so many things to talk about. Let me talk about the way he introduces the track itself. He says, "Lord, forgive me for all sins. And I don't know if I believe in God, but I believe in the forces. Like I believe in the four seasons. I believe in the floor of sin. I drive Mercs past poor people. They look at me like they saw a king." And then he blacks out. He goes into a different dimension, right? Talking about the struggles. He wants to do this, but can he do this in the hood, right? Will he put himself in this particular danger, right? There's a back and forth. Which way shall I move? And this track, as I said, it captures the nature, the polarity of the hood, the good and the bad. And there's another important line that really jumps out to me. Jigga said I was the best and niggas act like they didn't hear it. I ain't gassed over the cosign. I ain't in love with the cocoa. I ain't fucking with the popo. I'm just fucking with the purist. Who's realist? So Jay-Z, some years ago, he gave Kano one of the ultimate cosigns. I believe there was an interview taking place perhaps with DJ Semtex, and they asked Jay-Z, who are you messing with in the UK? And he named Kano as his favorite. But that's not a cosign that's going to gas up Kano. Of course, it's good to get that recognition from one of the best to do it. I just like that piece, right? And I feel like he needs his flowers in this particular regard, because he's, for me, one of the best to ever do it out of the UK, worldwide, however you want to frame it. Beyond geography, he's there. And again, maintaining this autobiographical, vulnerable lyricism across this particular album. Ends contains plenty of that. There's another line where he says, "Me and wifey just had beef. She's trying to marry me while I'm trying to marry beats. Love you unconditionally, even if I don't speak it. First, let me duppy this scene shit." So he's talking about these struggles, right? The struggles, the music versus the relationship. So that brutal honesty is powerful, and it connects. It connects. Because if it's not a relationship, I'm sure there's aspects whereby you're trying to go in one direction, but there's something else, and you're trying to make these two things actually coalesce and come together at the same time. But one thing has to maybe take precedent, and he captures that perfectly in those lyrics. Another powerful track, the track called Strangers. Now this is another example of honest storytelling, right? Vulnerability. And this track is such a beautiful concept in the way that he frames and tells this story, talking about two people, one himself and his partner Dean. They were once close, but of course, over something, for whatever reason, they've drifted apart. And the way he explores this narrative, it's so poetic, it's contemplative, and it's vivid. It's so vivid, the storytelling within this. And one of my favorite lines in this track, he says, "I guess we'll never know. It's pointless digging holes, cause if we go down that road, these burnt bridges charge tolls. So I'd rather romanticize about these things and write a song about the what ifs, cause I could never write no diss." So even though they've drifted, it's still love that kind of transcends the intimacy of the relationship. That's powerful. That's honest. That's the perspective. I haven't heard anybody kind of speak to this in this particular manner. This is a very, very masterfully executed song. We're talking about Strangers. And so you really need to take in the whole song to actually get the full emotional impact. But that's without a doubt one of my favorite joints. And the final track I want to talk about specifically is the track called Seashells in the East. Now this track is interesting. It's all about products of your environment. It's all about questioning the mentality. It's all about asking the question, can we break these cycles? And it's something that in essence perhaps sums up the record. Let's start with the hook. The hook is very powerful. What does Kano say? He said, you won't find seashells in East End, but you might see shells in East End. There ain't no piers or no rocks here, but most of your peers will sell rocks here. Survival instinct's a must. You hug that road, but road it don't show love. Leave that place before you get stuck. Can't wait till you wake before you wake up. So this is one of those tracks that should get the brain moving, should get the brain spinning, should open up the heart. It's again that juxtaposition, posing those questions and asking people to actually, okay, consider what he's saying, the gravity of the words that he's speaking. And another beautiful moment, another one of the high points amongst many, is the way he ends the track. It's like a poem of sorts. And there's a few lines that I'll just talk about. What does he say? He says, invisible walls that never fall, learn to climb before you crawl. Don't get stuck here, man-made or mind-made. Don't be a statistic blaming ghetto physics for holding you back. Okay, so these are questions, these are ponderings. Eternal strength versus external influences, victim or victor. The situation is the same. Is it how you see it? Is it how you look at it? Is that the important question? The way he ends this poem. He says, throwing bricks at glass ceilings, do or die. He who dreams with open eyes is alive. So it's a very beautiful depiction, subtle messages like, listen, what are you going to do? Are you going to be confined to these invisible walls? Are you going to break free? So that line at the end, a very powerful line for me, resonated strongly. He who dreams with eyes open is alive. And there's so much fantastic storytelling across this project. I really, really hope you give it a go if you haven't heard it before, and then let me know what you think. If you have heard this project before, let me know what your favorite albums are also in the comments below. So you've heard some of my favorite tracks on the album, and I'm going to do one final plea to try and summarize why you should give this album a go. If you're interested in hearing from a master craftsman, master lyricist, right, over lush and varied, emotionally resonant instrumentation. We're talking about autobiographical and vivid depictions of life in the manner. Then I think you should really give this album a go. It's a seminal piece of art, right? And I'm sure it will hit you right in the feels. So give it a go. That's my final plea to you. That's going to be it for this iteration of the greatest albums ever heard. I'm Eche, this is Eche in Life, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace. Hello, welcome to the channel. This is Eche in Life. I'm your host Eche, and what we're talking about today is the greatest albums ever heard, or in some people's cases, the greatest albums never heard. And I have a very special album to actually kick off this series, and we're talking about an album released by one of London's preeminent lyricists. This rapper appeared in Def Jam Icon amongst other heavyweights such as Big Man, Big Man?